I'm talking to Samir Ranic, who's Associate Professor of Pathology at the College of Medicine in Qatar. But more importantly, he is also Editor-in-Chief of the Bosnian Journal of Basic Medical Science. Samir, publishing is changing dramatically. How do you see the future of medical publishing?
It's really difficult to predict in which direction it will move. But my impression is, from my experience and how it looks like at the moment, that most of the journals will go being open access. At least the vast majority of the journals, if not fully open access, they have this at least hybrid option, which allows authors with payment to make their articles immediately available to the scientific community. That's first thing. My strong belief is that everything will become open access, fully open access, which is a good opportunity, but there are many obstacles. We have witnessed a lot of challenges related to open access, including predatory policy, the lack of funding to pay, because scientific publishing is not cheap. It costs a lot. So there are obstacles in this regard. Who will pay the cost of scientific publishing? So that's the second issue. The third is huge competition. More and more journals. Really, there is no control about the number of journals. Still, new journals come out every day, not only from the small countries, from periphery of scientific world, also from developed world, from the big publishers who also create these so-called mega journals. Each big publisher, when I say big, I mean publishers like Elsevier, like Springer Nature, like Wiley and Sons, like BMC, and all these. They have all these mega journals. So the competition is really huge. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing is a really issue that concerns me is scientific integrity, scientific misconduct, data fabrication. A lot of things are ongoing, but are also becoming more visible because of the widely accessible scientific publications. So I mentioned several things, including the way the scientific medical publishing is moving toward, but also mentioned some of the obstacles that I currently see, and those that will become more and more visible in the coming years.
Of course, you mentioned a number of aspects of publishing, but even before you get to publishing, what are your thoughts about preprints?
Yeah, preprints I didn't mention because I mentioned maybe a couple of most important, in my view, aspects of scientific publishing. Preprint is something also relatively new, started a couple of years ago. Personally, I don't mind having scientific publication being available before formally peer-reviewed. Personally, I also uploaded several of my publications when and my colleagues on my team and collaborators I work with considered that it's good to make it available as early as possible. We made a preprint as well. So personally, I don't see the problem with the preprint, although it should be carefully taken and considered, given that it's not peer-reviewed, and in most of these platforms that offer preprint also allow and clearly make it clear to the readers that this is not peer-reviewed publication. So I think that there is nothing wrong with the preprints in its nature, taking into consideration that it's not peer-reviewed publication, and the readers must take this into consideration when reading and reviewing such manuscripts.
And what are your thoughts on peer review itself? It comes under some criticism from time to time.
That's another very good and important question that also I didn't mention in the first instance. Peer review is still essential, really, to keep the quality and control over scientific publications. I recently read an article how much the scientific publications change following peer review. So in my experience, I can say that maybe in 20–30% of the cases, peer review really improved the quality of the paper. But we should not forget that in many instances, the scientific publication, once it's done, you cannot do that much in the terms of the study type, design, results. You can just improve some things, but I believe in the minority of the cases, you can really change the study design, additional experiments if required, to really change the overall quality and the content of certain study. But still, I believe in peer review as a process, as long as it's fair, transparent. It contributes really to a certain quality of scientific publishing. We must keep peer review as a sort of essential tool for control over the content that we publish.
One of the interesting things about peer review, among the many positive things it can do, is they can identify scientific misconduct. And in your specialty, pathology, there has been a problem with, for example, image manipulation. How do journals cope with that?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question about scientific misconduct. Maybe in pathology, still least compared with some other disciplines, imaging-based disciplines, where these manipulation with images is relatively common. But looks like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There will be tools like we check for plagiarism. We have tools now, pretty efficient tools to check for plagiarism. Similarly, we will be able also to check for the image manipulation and fabrication. And these tools will definitely help in reducing the rate of scientific misconduct that we face these days. As editor of the journal, I can tell you that we have seen such a sort of misconduct or paper mills that also recently showed up as the worst of all possible types of scientific misconduct. And I'm trying to keep alerted about all these issues all the time. And as I told you in introduction, when introducing myself, I have now a team that helps me in this regard as well, to check for all the integrity about the paper, including data fabrication, paper mills, image manipulations that occur now in scientific in medical publishing. I'm also following certain websites like Retraction Watch, for instance. I receive their news on daily basis. I'm not saying that I read all of them every day, but frequently I do so, just to keep my eye on what's going on in scientific field in the terms of the scientific misconduct, different types of scientific misconduct, or including the question that you raised about data manipulation or image manipulation.
Let me talk about something slightly different now. And you discussed how there are so many journals, and in the context of the Croatian Medical Journal and in your own journal, how can smaller journals compete with the big players? Yeah,
we are really small. Likewise, Croatian Medical Journal, Bosnian Journal of Basic Medical Sciences is also a small journal. It's association-based journal, small one really. And as I said, the competition is really, really huge, and it will be really very challenging to survive in the next 5 to 10 years, being just a single journal published in a small country. So, but we will do our best really to survive, not to be taken by these big publishers. Although I'm sure Croatian Medical Journal, like Bosnian Journal, have received offers to be taken by these big publishers in the previous years. I'm talking about legitimate publishers, big publishers really. We had at least 3-4 offers since 2015 or 16 from big publishers to be taken over and go to their platform. But we decided not to do so far, despite the offers, in some cases, not in all, were reasonable and would offer better visibility of the journal, and probably they would offer also better promotion of the journal being on the platforms of these big publishers. So for small medical journals are really, we need really to be very highly competitive with big publishers. We need to put additional efforts in all the aspects of scientific publishing, from the very simple like online submission system sorry, from online submission system, from the website, from the speed of peer review process, from the quality of peer review, to the final stage when you accept the manuscript, the post-acceptance phase and the post-publishing phase. These are all really challenging for small medical journals, but I can tell you for Bosnian medical journals that we really put a lot of efforts. We created a team of 7 to 8 people now actively working every day in the journal, including myself, to speed up the peer review process, to make it all professional, to run timely peer review process in post-acceptance phase, to enable authors quick post-acceptance with the early visibility and early release on the website and on PubMed, to quickly generate PDF and all this stuff. And I think this really helped us in our case to improve the Bosnian Medical Journal to become more international, more recognized in the region and the worldwide. And it's also somehow reflected in our journal impact factor. As I told you in the introduction, when I started in 2014, impact factor was just 0.4. Now it reached nearly 3.8 in 21. Our site score by Scopus is, by the way, now more than 5.2.
So we've spoken a little bit about before submission to a journal. We've talked about peer review and the process of publication. Well, then after it's published, the great new thing in publishing is the social media. So tell me how you see social media fitting in with the publication mechanism.
Yeah, I think that this is another important aspect of scientific publishing. We put also efforts in this regard. We have a dedicated person in our editorial team. We have our blog, that's first thing. We have also our profiles on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, where our content is available all the time and regularly updated. We also send newsletters. We have a pool of several thousand of reviewers in our peer review pool. Occasionally we send them newsletters about the journal's content when we publish a new number, new issue. So we keep really close eye on our authors and our reviewers. I mean, in other words, on our scientific community. So the journal is somehow visible on all the available platforms.
Samir, thank you very much for that comprehensive journey through the whole publishing process. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you very much.